Hello. It has been, I almost want to say like a couple months or so since my last video of this nature. During the holiday season, we took a break. All my campaigns that I run took a break during the time being, because holidays are a hard time to get everyone together to have a beneficial schedule where people aren't ignoring family, friends, or just personal time off that they need. Because during the holidays, at least especially for my line of work, the holidays are very, very, very busy time of year. So decided to take a break throughout almost all of December and a lot of November. So, anyways, we're back. Let me see. We did have a session actually a couple sessions after the last video I did, but due to time constraints going on and personal things going on in my life, I just wasn't entirely in the mood to make these videos. But now I am, so I'm going to try to wrap up those two before I actually come up to the session we just had today, which I'm not going to lie, it was a fucking doozy, and probably one of the most nail-biting combat scenarios I've ever actually ran as a dungeon master. So, first off, at the end of the last video, the party had just got done dealing with the orc camp. They had the blacksmith garage basically forging some knuckles for Vondel Sandtracker, the dwarven monk, and they had rested for the night. As the morning came around, the knuckles were collected, and then Rourke, the half-orc fighter of the party, executed Garrosh, because he's like, hey, he was one of those orcs, I don't care, we're leaving them all dead, no witnesses, no survivors, that's how I run. So at this point right now, the party got in contact with Nee, who was completely MIA for the last combat, due to him just having an orgy with a bunch of the orcish women that he had managed to seduce. So there was almost some bloodshed and in-party combat going on, but it was all it was calmed down. Everything was fine. They proceeded to move on. The party came across these 4 warg that were mounts for the orcs. And due to a number of animal handling checks and some intimidation checks in some cases, they were able to tame these wargs temporarily, at least, to be their current mounts. And the wargs were Frostfang, Overbite, Thundercunt, and Scarl. Scarl was the 4th one. So the party now all have these 4 wargs for mounts. The one party member who did not get a mount was Izzy, who, as I mentioned in the last video, got a magic carpet. So that's his mount, basically. So at this point now, they found out the location of the nearest reasonable civilization, because Fandalen, the village that they started the campaign in, which got burnt and raided to the ground by this orcish encampment, was literally just a village. So they were actually looking for a city at this point, something that actually had reasonable trade and market value and opportunities for them. And the closest place was a city that was about a couple days' ride northeast from their current position through the forests, or it could be like closer to a week if they actually took the road. They opt in to taking the forest route. As they're going through, I was making rolls to see what possibility it would be that young green dragon that they had sparred with the day before would come back, and the dice favored that, hey, they're going to have one more go at this dragon. So a fight takes place. A lot of the wargs got injured, but none of them died. None of the party died. They slayed the dragon. Izzy actually carved his way inside the dragon. So this little gnomish pirate bard, like cutting his way inside the dragon, and to look inside its stomach for any valuables. And they found some like gems and gold that was not entirely digested. They harvested some of the dragon's scales and teeth and claws, and Khaleesi, the elven rogue, actually harvested some of the dragon's webbing from its wings and everything to try to fashion a cloak for later on. They make their way into the nearest city, which is the city of Brindlevale, and within the first few minutes they got to the city, they went to the stables to try to deal with their wargs, and obviously there was a lot of uneasiness amongst the locals because wargs are evil creatures and not common for mounts. I mean, at least in civilized settings. So they had to do some bribing with the stable master to let the wargs stay, and they paid the stable master extra to be like, hey, what old or sick, beasts of burden do you have here? If so, we'll buy them, feed them to our wargs, make sure they're fed. We'll be busy in the city for a little bit. They then went to the nearest tavern called the Gimping Wagon, which was ran by a Goliath named Gurch. And within the time that they were there and through the interactions with the stable master as well, they noticed that everyone in the city so far had an extreme resentment towards Khaleesi, who is a wood elf. And through discussions with Gurch, it was discovered that all elves within the city are slave status. Like, everyone is racist towards them, everyone hates them, everyone treats them like dirt. They're either slaves or basically killed. That's basically how it goes. So the party, since everyone is either neutral or evil, except for Khaleesi, the assassin rogue, who is honestly the only actual good alignment in the party, everyone decides, fine, we'll treat her like our slave. Let's just not rub people the wrong way. Let's try to fit in. And obviously Khaleesi wasn't fond of this, but didn't act out about it in public. So they paid for their rooms, stayed in for the night, and Rourke and Vondel Sandrak, or Vondel the dwarven monk, made an arrangement with Gurch, the tavern owner, to actually have, if he had any slaves for sale, to actually have them delivered every morning to Rourke's room, for the sole purpose so that Rourke could coup de grace them to satisfy the hunger of his great axe, Vein Eater, because Vein Eater has the stipulation that it needs to kill a humanoid every single day, or you gain a permanent stack of exhaustion. And the only way to remove a single stack of exhaustion is a greater restoration spell. So they basically were paying for people so that he can just murder them just to keep the axe happy. Which, again, is very dark, very grim, but I liked it. It was clever. So the start of the next day, they decided to go out venturing amongst Brindlevale, and they went to a few shops to try to get some needs. They went to the Forge Ward, which was the blacksmith there, to try to get some weapons and armor crafted, like heavy armor crafted with some of the dragon parts that they had just acquired. They went to the Skin Shack, which I know sounds like something completely different, but it's actually a tanner business, to get some leather armor and that wing membrane fashioned into a cloak for Khaleesi. Then they also went to an arcanist shop called Trinkles and Baubles, which was actually ran by an elf who had like this collar around its neck. So basically still an elf in servitude and slavery, but still running its own shop. They went there to try to get some potions, get some things enchanted. Nee, the human druid who's all about just procreating his bloodline, actually harvested the testicles of the Green Dragonborn and wanted to see what he could have made with it. So I had a potion of fertility basically created for him, where you get a vial and you have up to 6 uses of it before it's bone dry, because you're not supposed to chug the whole thing. It's basically equivalent to Viagra. You get advantage on Constitution saving throws. Let me see. You are immune to poison and disease, which is beneficial to him because it's honestly quite likely he's going to contract a lot of STDs on his character. And I think it gives you advantage on all performance checks. So again, everything sexually oriented. So he was happy about that. Throughout traveling through the city and getting some notice, getting to meet some of the locals, they noticed that, again, everyone hates elves passionately. And most of the party's okay with it. Obviously, Khaleesi, who has to act like the slave of the party in order to not possibly get the party killed or in some sort of awkward situation, is considering the idea of murdering everyone she sees because she's getting so pissed off. It was quite lovely. They eventually, near the end of that day, they decided to go to the local whorehouse called A Good Time, time spelled Tyme, and it was ran by a half-orc harem master called Sven, and all of the whores were elven females. And Izzy and Nee went in there. Nee obviously went there just to get his nuts off on a bunch of elven women. Izzy went there to actually try to convince a bunch of these elven women to defect against their master and try to rebel against the city. And none of these women were having it. He was rolling very poorly on all of his persuasion checks, and he's a bard. Like, this is what he's supposed to do, but the dice were just not in his favor. And eventually got to the point that he tried to convince one of the whores, like he was like bringing them into his room one at a time and telling them different stories to try to pit them against each other, that he tried to get two of the whores to drown the third one, who was the most resentful to his entire plan. And when they all disagreed, he decided to leave the place, being all pissed off to Sven. And when the whores tried to confront Sven about it, he acted defensive, like, "This is kind of establishment when you're running where your whores are just telling all these audacious lies. I am done. I've had up to here." He starts to leave. He goes down to the main level where there are some more whores, and then he tries to convince them. And when he fails that check again, he puts a glyph of warding on the front door that is an explosive rune, and tries to imitate the voice of Sven from outside the building, try to get some of the whores to try to open the door. And at first they're not, like, believing it, because they're like, we know the infrastructure of this place. There's one set of stairs. We know he was upstairs talking to you. We haven't seen him come down. How the fuck would he be outside? But one of them rolled stupidly and opened the door. Poof, explosion. The whole front door is blown off. She's dead. Two of the other whores that were in close vicinity died from the shrapnel and rubble. And yeah, that was fun. At this point now, everyone in the Gimping Wagon, which is the tavern they're staying in, that was only about maybe a couple blocks at most away from the good time, heard the explosion. They knew that Nee and Izzy was still out, so they kind of suspected, okay, something just went wrong, so they all start heading in that direction. And Izzy actually managed to stealth past the party, so he never actually got caught doing this. But there's a lot of suspicion that he is the culprit behind all this, but no one could prove it. Even Sven, even though he's like, I'm certain it was that guy, he was causing a scene, apparently all these stories are coming out, but he couldn't prove it, because no one actually saw him place the ward and cause the explosion, and no one saw him make the getaway, so a little weird spot. The party gets back, and back to the good time, confronting Sven and what's going on, trying to figure out what the hell's going on and everything. And it was then discovered that a couple of the slave girls, especially one of them, Morgana was her name, a high elf, younger female, like, I'm saying in her 20s, like in human years, but like as an elf, she's probably in like her 50s or 60s, something close to that. She apparently is the heir to the original family that used to run like this city and everything back when the elves were the hierarchy within the city of Brindlevale, until Duke and Duchess Braxton took over the whole place, and then after that, it's when the whole hatred and slavery of elves took place shortly afterwards. So then they decided, all right, well, we're going to take Morgana out of here. And Sven was like, no, you're not taking her out of here. She needs to stay here. And there was going to be an explanation for this, but they decided to just use a stunning strike from the monk on Sven, not to kill him, but just stun him, grab Morgana, and leave. Talking with Morgana then when they got back to the tavern room, which they successfully snuck her in without her being spotted. It was then realized, as she told the story about how her family, again, used to run the city. They were the people in charge. The city was completely different. And Sven was actually her caretaker when she was a child. And basically, he has been using this whorehouse as a front to keep a lot of the elven women especially safe from persecution and, more importantly, death. Because the one rule that resides within the city is you are not allowed to kill someone else's slaves. So since they technically are his slaves, a lot of people will come into the whorehouse, and sure, they'll take their frustrations out on the females, whether it be sexually or physically in a painful sort of way, but they could not kill them. So in a way, he was keeping them safer there than as if they went to some person's random house under ownership. So he was actually probably the kindest person within the city. He didn't have a chance to explain himself that way, so that was kind of weird. So at this point, then, the party kind of shifted their plans to the idea of, all right, we're going to talk to this Duke and Duchess. We're going to figure out what the fuck's going on. We're going to try to end this whole rule, put Morgana back on her throne. Ta-da! The party's finally acting like a group of adventurers trying to do good instead of, oh my god, these guys are fucking evil. I might have to kill them all. Like, literally for 2 straight sessions, I was writing in, like, all caps in my notebook, might have to kill party. Because I am not prepared to run an evil campaign. I'm not ready for that. So, fast forward to today. Party then decide to go out, try to see if some of the items that they had put into work at the blacksmith, tanner, and the arcanist were finished. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And at this point, then they decide, okay, well, we're going to go talk to Sven again. Now it's been a day later, in which case they go to see Sven, who his entire front of his building is still gaping whole. But they see him literally trying to take a table and try to, like, put it up like it's going to be a fucking door or something. And he's trying to do what he can. I also forgot to mention, before the previous session ended, Nee decided that he wanted one of the elven women to come with him as his personal escort, basically, forever. And he kept failing his persuasion rolls over and over and over and over again. He's just like, come on, girl, blah, blah, blah. And again, this is before it was related to everyone that, hey, this was actually the safest place for these elven women in the entire city was to stay here. And he's like, well, you can just leave the city with me. He's like, yeah, you're some random person. For much as I know, you're going to kill me the second you have ownership of me. Like, they were having trouble understanding just their mentality of the situation. But eventually he forcefully, I'm not going to say forcefully like he abducted her, but he basically persuaded her in a way to the point that she realized that he was not going to let it go. So she went along with him in hopes of trying to escape later. So next morning comes along. Everyone ventured out to do this, go get their things. The elven slave girl tried to escape from Nee. He saw her doing this. He's like, hey, what the fuck's going on? She goes, I don't want to be here. I want to be back. He's like, well, fine, fucking go. Get out of here. So she goes back, and she gets caught by these two random country bumpkins while she's trying to get back to the whorehouse. And Khaleesi and Vondel, who are on their way to speak with Sven to try to calm things down and everything, saw what was going on. So Vondel was distracting them, and Khaleesi, who's an assassin rogue, actually managed to coup de grace both of them before anything happened. So now there are these two dead city locals in the middle of the street. So they drag them over to the good time and were like, hey, if anyone asks what's going on, say that these people were trying to steal a bunch of your whores or kill them, and there was a whole fight going on, and then kaboom, that's what happened. That's the story, you're going to stick to it. And Sven was like, okay, get the fuck out of here, you destroyed my building. Then the plan was laid out that, hey, we're going to try to speak to the Duke and Duchess, we're going to try to overthrow them, kill them, whatever, put Morgana back in the seat of power. If shit goes down, though, we're going to leave Morgana here. We're not going to mention any affiliation to you or them or her, so this way she'll at least be in the clear. So we're basically going to just try to figure out reason why we're going to see the Duke, and then just try to kill him. So he's like, alright, as long as you don't mention anything about us, that's perfectly fine. So after the party go and grab a few things, they all start meeting up at the Duke's manor, one by one by one by one. But first, it was Rourke and Vondel. And they came up with the plan that, hey, Vondel, you're a noble. Rourke is, again, a half-orc fighter, so it's easier for him to be the proposed servant in this sort of archetype. Hey, we went to this arcanist shop, the one we went to before and everything, trinkets and baubles, the one owned by Elf. I told the guy, how much is your shop worth? And he goes, well, you can't buy it from me. I'm technically still under ownership. Well, who do I need to talk to? That would be the Duke himself. Fine, I'm going to go talk to the Duke. I'm going to buy this shop and you. Okay. All right. So he then conveyed to Vondel that was his plan to get an introduction with the Duke to try to exchange, basically try to buy property and make a deal in that sort of regard. So the two of them went up to the door. They were greeted by like a small child, in which case Rourke's like, where the hell's your dad? He's like, okay. Out comes this human male, very dignified, a little scruff going on, but still looking really good. Crimson red, like fine coat and slacks and everything. Invites them both in. They're discussing terms for what it would need to take place if they wanted to purchase the building. Introductions obviously were made, trying to find out. All right, you guys are brand new to this city. I've never seen you guys before, and you're just coming in trying to buy property. I'm gonna need some like backstory for your purposes and shit of that matter. So a lot of bullshitting was going on. In which case, Rourke then finally goes, all right, now that we have an idea of terms and a price, I'm going to go get the accountant for Lord Vondel here, and we will come back when we can figure out terms. Until then, whatever. So Vondel and Duke Braxton were then left alone in a room, and they decided to have a toast and everything in regards to the drink. Now, Vondel, again, is a brewmaster, and he's a shadow monk, but he's been telling me for a while that he wants to switch over to being a drunken fist monk, which I'm totally okay with, so I've been slowly working in the storyline that his character is losing his innate ability to work in the shadows, and eventually he's going to be permanently in a drunken stupor, or at least able to imitate a drunken stupor. I haven't 100% figured out how to finish that transition off, but I've got it started for him at least, because that's what he wants. Since we now have Xanathar guides to everything, so yay, we can use all those stats and spells. So they're having a toast, and Vondel is trying to make, basically, since he has a brewery kit, has set skill checks if he wants to know a certain thing about an alcohol, and for a DC of 15, he can try to identify specific alcohol, because this Duke pulled out what he called a whiskey, but it was crimson red. And he's like, I've never heard of a red whiskey, like that red of a whiskey before. So he made a check. He succeeded the check. So I'm like, well, from what you can tell, it is indeed whiskey, but you've never, ever seen a whiskey like that before. This is something to be concerned about and alarmed about. Just fair warning. It is indeed whiskey, but it looks like it's not just whiskey. So at this point, then, he's like, well, I'm a dwarf. I'm resistant to poison. I have advantage on poison saving throws. What's the worst that could happen? Chug takes a good sip, and he had to make a wisdom saving throw because it was actually a charm potion. But he succeeds. So rather than give away that, oh no, this whole thing was foiled, you didn't charm me, he decides to try to play dumb and act along like he was charmed, as Rourke comes back, along with Izzy, who is now being portrayed as the accountant of the group, who, in one of the previous days prior, while they're in the city, was trying to start a conversation with this kind of older lady. I would call her like between a cougar, like older than a cougar, so I think we'll call her like a bobcat level, like in her 50s, stuff of that nature. Trying to start this conversation with this lady who just was not liking his charm. He, again, sometimes his roles can be so damn bad that he spat in her face, in which case she like flung him against the wall using some form of arcane magic and then just pieced out. When he shows up, he sees her descending down the stairs because she is the Duchess of this place, and he's just like, oh shit, this is not good. At this point, Khaleesi and Nee had also joined with the party, so Nee was being portrayed as like the spiritual healer of this little traveling group, and Khaleesi obviously as the slave. So they're speaking terms with the Duke, and Rourke, the half-orc fighter, is proficient in medicine, nature, survival, and he's proficient in herbalism and alchemist kit, because he likes to dabble in that sort of stuff. So he goes, hey, what's he drinking over there? Oh, this is whiskey, but it's completely red. He's like, I've never heard of one like that. Could I make a check to see if I can recognize what that sort of stuff is? I'm like, well, since you're into alchemy, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, natural 20. So I'm like, yeah, that is a charm potion mixed with whiskey. So he immediately smacks it out of his hand and is like, what the hell are you trying to cause here? And the Duke is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What the hell? We're just having a drink. I'm drinking it with him. He's like, yeah, well, I dare you to drink the whole fucking thing. So the Duke grabs a whole vial, chugs the whole thing down. It's just like, I don't know what's wrong. In which case then Rourke, Vondel, and Izzy were like, all right, we're going to need a few minutes to discuss amongst ourselves to finalize. We apologize for that little scene back there. Rourke is a little bit defensive over the safety of his master. He's never seen a red whiskey before, which can you blame him? It's a simple half-orc mind. Please let him be. In which case Rourke was just like, in which case the Duke then did like leave the room and close the doors. It's one of those like double sliding doors of that fashion to leave him in the study as they are discussing. As now they start plotting how they're going to either destroy the manor, kill the Duke, or figure out what's going on. Like one of them suggested, well, he just chugged that whole potion without flinching. Maybe he's already charmed, and he's actually like, this is like, he's a puppet. This is like a Ponzi scheme and everything. Like he's not even the person in charge of everything here. And they're discussing for like a good 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm sitting back there making rolls because the Duke and Duchess are actually a couple of incubus and succubus. So not only are they natural charmers, but they shapeshift. And most importantly, they can go ethereal. So at this point now, I was making my rolls to see how long it would take before they would actually just phase into the room using the ethereal plane, just walk right in, and just chill. Eventually, they phase back once they've heard the entire plan, which I know for some of you structured people out there, it's like, well, when you're in the ethereal plane, you can't hear or see things that are happening with monos within the prematerial plane. It's like, well, it's flavor, alright? Just leave me alone. This is a homebrewed campaign. I'm at least consistent with my bullshit rules. Anyways, so at this point right now, they're all just like, oh shit, they're here, they heard everything, I guess we need to fight. So everyone rolled for initiative, and then one of them dawned like, wait, what's up with that child? Is that child possibly the one that's behind all of this, actually? So combat goes on. First up is Vondel, who casts a minor illusion on like the corner of the room because he's a shadow monk, so he has minor illusion available to him, and he flipped the table up to try to get cover and try to distract both the Duke and Duchess Braxton by, oh look, I'm actually over here in the shadows, woo, because I'm a shadow monk, hey! After that was Izzy, who casted Shatter on both Duke and Duchess and successfully got it, so both of them took some damage and everything, and he then decided to inspire Rourke, which is a D8 at this point, which is cool, not bad. And since Izzy is a College of Valor, that inspiration die can be used on damage as well. So it's pretty fucking intense. Next up was actually the child who entered the room and dropped the Alter Self form and actually revealed to be a Warlock of the Fiend, and decided, looking at the entire party, there are 5 players, so I was rolling a D6. If I rolled a 6, it meant re-roll to choose a target for what spell is going to cast. And I landed it on Khaleesi, the Elven Rogue Assassin, and that Warlock cast Banishment to send Khaleesi into Purgatory for the next minute. So basically, the one player in the group who is naturally good against being charmed, and a lot of fucking burst damage, was gone from the party. She's just like, shit. Now, Banishment is a concentration spell, so if they deal damage to the Warlock, it has to make concentration checks to see if it maintains. But otherwise, for the next minute, Khaleesi is off in the middle of nowhere. In which case, then, after that, it turned into Nee's turn, who's just like, oh, hey, I was next to this wall due to the setup. Yeah. Well, I'm going to meld stone, and I'm literally going to do like the Homer Simpson to the bushes thing where I just meld into the walls. Alright, what are you going to do there? I'm just going to chill. What? Yeah, I don't want to deal with this shit. I'm going to just sit on the wall. Alright, this is typical Nee. There's combat going on. He's just not going to fucking be there. Okay, whatever. Next up was the Duke, who tried to charm Izzy and failed to do so because Izzy is a gnome, and gnomes have advantage on on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws against magic, and charm is definitely magic. So that base turn was basically over. Then it ended up being Khaleesi's turn, but since she's in Purgatory, she goes, well, I guess while I'm here, I'm just going to start putting poison on all my weapons so that they're ready to go. It's like, okay. Next it was the Duchess's turn, and she successfully charmed Rourke, because Rourke has, I think he has a +0 to his wisdom modifier, and he's not proficient at it, so it's literally a flat roll. So he is now on the side of the Duke and Duchess and the Warlock. And he is up next. And he is right next to Vondel. So he's like, alright, I attack. So for his first attack, he, let me see. Yeah, his first attack misses. Second attack, he hits for a pretty good amount of damage. In which case, Vondel's like, what the fuck, man? So in the next order, Vondel tries to move away from Rourke by actually putting his shoulder up against the table and just pushing it forward towards the Duke and Duchess so he can get closer to them while still being like blocked so he can't be charmed himself. That was his line of thinking. Rourke misses opportunity of attack, and that was the end of Vondel's turn. Izzy, at this point now, let me see, what did he try to do? I know he cast a spell. I'm just trying to remember what. No, he did not cast a spell. He actually ran over to the side, tried to get over towards the Warlock. He missed an attack, and that was the end of his turn. It got to the Warlock's turn, Oh no, he moved over towards the warlock, and then he decided, all right, I'm going to create this little safe zone to try to protect Khaleesi if she does show up. So he used bardic spells, like a little hut, basically. It creates like a 10-foot dome in an area that no magic can pass through or come out of, and only allied units can have entrance inside of it. So he goes inside, in which case the warlock then, who has a few 7th level spells at his disposal once per day. And again, this is a party of like level 6s and 1 level 7. So for an enemy to have a 7th level spell, I'm not gonna lie, I created a combat situation that was built specifically to separate the party members from each other and focus down one target. So it was either going to be like a well-fought, victorious battle for the party, or it was going to be a TPK. There was no middle ground with this combat that's set up. But this warlock then decides to cast Finger of Death at Izzy, but since he's in the hut, the necrotic magic just bounces off harmlessly, so that was one massive spell burned out of the way. Not bad. Nee is still just chilling on the wall. That's the end of his turn. The Duke then decides to move over towards where he saw the dome get set up, and he casts a wall of fire around it. And basically it's like, okay, if you ever drop this building or try to walk out, you're going to walk into a wall of fire. Have fun with that. Let me see. Khaleesi, again, just had to pass her turn because she couldn't do anything. Next up, the lady then tried to attack the minor illusion because she kept failing her fucking perception rolls to tell that that illusion was fake and didn't notice the table sliding up towards her. Like, again, I like to roll for a lot of checks and everything during my spare time while the players are talking. I'm just doing, like, real-time, like, rolls and all that shit, and she just could not figure out. She was fucking thick. So she goes up to this illusion, takes a swing at it. It's like, oh, that's not real. Shit. Her turn is over. It's now Rourke's turn, who walks up to Vondel because he's still the closest enemy at this time to him. First attack is a critical. And due to the nature of the weapon he has, he gets to roll not only 2d12s because it's a crit, he also gets to roll 2d8s. And those d8s are necrotic, and whatever damage he does necrotically is added to him as temporary hit points. And he does 31 points of damage in that one attack. And since he's a great weapon master, anytime you drop an enemy's hit points to 0 or get a critical, you can use a bonus action to attack again. So he got 3 attacks on Vondel with his very strong axe. And I think he dropped Vondel to 3 hit points. Like, Vondel was on death's door. It was pretty bad. Start of the next round, Vondel then decides to flip the table back on top of himself and use his Shadow Step as a Shadow Monk to bamf to the shadow right next to Duchess Braxton. And at this point then, he just immediately just punches with a stunning strike and this unleashes a flurry of blows, just boom, 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 does some decent damage to her. At this point right now, also at the end of that last round, Rourke finally made a wisdom saving throw to break the charm, but after he did like 70 points of damage to Vondel. It's like a little late. So the next round then, Vondel attacks Duchess. At this point, Izzy decides to actually float out of the dome on his magic carpet above the flames and dive bombs with his rapier out towards the Duke, and he misses, takes his mace and misses, and that's basically his turn. The Warlock is up next, and while he is now in melee of Izzy, puts his hand on Izzy and tries to plane shift him to the 9 hells. And Izzy succeeds because his charisma is fucking good. Or is it charisma or wisdom? It's one of those checks, but either way, he succeeds, doesn't get shifted. That's 2 7th level spells burned on this gnome that he just manages to skirt away from. At this point, Nee is finally up. He emerges from the wall. He goes, alright, I'm going to cast Conjure Animals. I'm like, alright, what you going to summon? I'm going to summon 8 wolves all around the Warlock and the Incubus. Yeah, and for my bonus action, they're going to attack now. So I'm like, okay, that's going to be 8 wolves attacking, and since they have pack tactics, they all have advantage on their attacks, and if an attack lands, the opponents need to make a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. So the concentration spell that the Warlock had on the banishment spell on Khaleesi was finally broken as all five wolves landed their attacks and just pinned this Warlock down to the ground. Two of the three wolves that were attacking the Incubus landed their attacks and knocked him down on the ground. At this point, the battle was finally turning, and Nee came in clutch when it actually looked like the party might be starting to falter a little bit. At this point now, since the concentration was broken and Khaleesi, at the end of her last turn, was held in action saying, hey, as soon as I am available, I am attacking the nearest person to me. She literally released banishment, and she was melee to where the Duke was currently standing. So for her first attack, she went to attack, and she rolled a critical. Because she got, she didn't get an advantage, but she rolled a critical naturally. And she had sneak attack automatically because the Duke / the Incubus was flanked by a bunch of allied units. And she did like 40 plus damage right then and there, killed him off. So next up in the order was the Duke, but since the Duke was dead, it now went to Khaleesi. She walked over to the Warlock, who was now pinned down to the ground and prone, and coup de grace that one. The Warlock is now dead. It finally cuts back to the Duchess's turn, but she doesn't get a turn because she was stunned previously by Vondel at the start of this round by Vondel. So she literally sees both her husband and their partner in crime, the Warlock, perish immediately, and she is frozen in like pain from the stunning strike, unable to escape, as Rourke literally just walks up and just takes his axe and just decapitates her head right off. So a combat that only went to full 3 rounds, mind you, but the first round to almost first 2 rounds, it was looking incredibly desperate for the party, like really bad. I mean, Vondel almost got dropped by an ally. Khaleesi was banished somewhere. Izzy was forced to hide in a hut to avoid getting destroyed by the Warlock. Nee was doing his typical Nee things and hiding somewhere else. But Nee finally stepping out, joining the fight, and coming in clutch. It probably was saved 2 of the party members' lives, if not all of them. At this point now, they decide to loot the bodies, and on the Warlock, Izzy found, let me see, a Staff of Lesser Fiends, which it's a little item I just created, but basically once per day you can summon a fiend creature of challenge rating 2 or lower for 1 hour that is basically has to follow your commands. Cool. See, Rourke on the lady found, basically harvested a bunch of her natural blood so he can try to concoct his own charm potions because he's an alchemist and an herbalist. Vondel found on the, around the neck of the Incubus was actually a collar of, not mind suppression. I can't remember what I actually called it, but basically it's an anti-charm like neck choker that you wear. So the wearer who has it has automatic advantage on all saving throws against being charmed. Something kind of neat. Khaleesi and Nee found in one of the bookcases, like one of those little pull-out books that there was actually a hidden passageway, and that's where we ended the last session. And holy shit, we're close to 40 minutes. This was a big fucking wrap-up. But that was basically the past 3 episodes, or past 3 sessions, all wrapped into one. But I'm so happy with how the combat went for this session, because it was still short. Granted, it took up like a good 2 hours to actually run the combat through and everything. It was only 3 rounds. But it literally went through the highs of, holy crap, we're fucked. Okay, we're good. We won! It's everything I want combat situations to be like. I want it to feel dire. I want them to feel desperate. They have to be creative. But when they succeed, they feel great about it. Anyways, thanks for joining. I will hopefully be back in a couple of weeks to do another video for the next session. We'll find out. We'll find out what the people find, what Legends of Lethargy, whatever, what they discover next time.